أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Verse number 15. هؤلاء قوم اتخذوا من دونه آلهة لولا يأتون عليهم بسلطان بين فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا. These people of ours have adopted other gods beside him. If they would only bring some clear authority to support them. So who's more in the wrong than someone who invents a lie about God? If you remember, the verses were describing the situation of these Ashab Al-Kahf, people of the cave. They were young men, and from the context we understand that they were in the court of the ruler in their city, and in a very tremendous sort of situation where probably the emperor had come to visit the city. They stood up and they declared their faith, and they said that we do not worship anything beside God, and if we do that, we have told a shatat about God. We have exceeded the limits of our speech about God. Now, this verse is apparently a sort of argument they put forward in front of that great delegation or emperor himself, that why they are not worshipping the gods of the Romans, why they are worshipping one God only and rejecting the gods of the Romans. Now, our people, so this shows very clearly that they were Romans as well. They were from the same people of those people who were ruling the area. So our people have adopted gods beside him. Now, of course, it's very difficult to reject something like the old tradition of the Roman pantheon and the collection of gods and such things. So the only thing they say is that where is the proof for existence of such gods? What proof you have about them except just the legends, except the traditions of your forefathers? Why they do not bring any clear authority, any clear proof? Sultan, in many places of the Quran, Sultan is used as proof. Although Sultan usually means authority of power, however, here it is authority of power over minds. So Sultan here means a clear proof. Why they don't bring a clear proof about it? How can we prove things in theology? How can we say things about God, or on what authority we can talk about God? You see that people usually express their views about God, isn't it? In my opinion, God should be like that. In my opinion, God should, or such and such people had the opinion of. Apparently, these opinions cannot be taken as authorized expression of what God is. We need proof more than that, either a rational proof, which is undeniable. Like, for example, okay, this creation needs a creator. So it gives us a proof, an understanding that there should be a creator. However, how that creator is, whether it's one or more than one, again, we either need to have a rational proof for that, or we need a proof from God himself, from the creator himself. Now, there was no proof, such proof about these gods or demigods in the pantheon of Roman theology. So they say there is no proof about it. While about one God we have proof, we have the prophets coming, also we have our rational understanding. If you are talking about gods without a proof, you are actually telling lies about God. You are inventing things about God. And this is a wrongdoing. This is dhulm. فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ, who is more in wrong, who's more a wrongdoer, or who's more in dark, because dhulm and dhulma are from the same root. So who's more in wrong as a dhulm? Dhulm is usually translated as oppression or wrongdoing. Now, this can be done against people, and it can be done against one's own self. It cannot be done against God, because we cannot oppress God or wrong God, but it can be done against one's own self. And when we do attribute things to God for which we have no proof, we have actually wronged ourselves. So who's more a wrongdoer against themselves, or who's more in wrong or in darkness than someone who attributes a lie about God or against God, or brings a lie against God? Because these things which we say have no authority whatsoever to prove them. And also, the qualities and attributes of God also should be understood either rationally, undeniable rational argument. Like, for example, God is knowledgeable. We know that by rational understanding, because if he was not knowledgeable, he couldn't have created. God is powerful, because if he was not powerful, he couldn't have created again, because creation needs knowledge and power. So these things we understand rationally. If we want to go further than this, for example, God punishes. This is something we cannot rationally understand. We have to, of course, refer to an authority. And therefore, whatever we say about God, it either should be rationally proved with undeniable argument, or it should be referred to someone who has some knowledge from God, revelation, of course. About the Roman gods, of course, none of these two existed. It was just legends, just mythology of Roman gods. And usually, people who talk about different gods existing in the world, they are referring to an old mythology which proves these gods or talks about these gods. There is no sort of proof about that, and this is what they are raising in the presence of that emperor or whatever was there. Now, there's a jump here. Now, they said this, and the story tells us that they were arrested and they escaped. Or after saying this, they just escaped from the people, because their punishment was death without any doubt. They knew that they are going to be punished and they are going to be executed for what they said, for rejecting the Roman gods. So after they somehow escape and they come together, they now discuss amongst themselves what to do, where to go. Either we have to surrender ourselves to death, or we have to seek some sort of solution. Now here, the verse number 16 is talking about this sort of discussion among themselves, consultation. What should we do now? And apparently there were different suggestions, what we have to do, and the final sort of decision is made to escape to a cave. And apparently this was, the verse alludes that this was a sort of inspiration from God, that you can go to a cave and keep away from the people. Verse number 16, وَإِذْ أَتَزَلْتُمُوهُمْ وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهَ فَأْوُوا إِلَى الْكَهْفِ يَنْشُرْ لَكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ مِنْ رَحْمَتِهِ وَيُهَيِّئْ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَمْرِكُمْ مِرْفَقًا. Now that you have dissociated yourselves from them and from what they worship, except God, then take refuge in the cave. Your Lord will unfold his mercy for you, and he will help you unto ease in your affair. Now, this final statement, last statement, is what alludes to the inspiration. How did they know that if they go to the cave, the Lord will ease their situation and would shower them with their mercy? They didn't say, hopefully it will happen. They say, it will happen. If we go to the cave, it will happen. God will unfold His mercy upon us. God will take us into ease in our affair. So they knew it for sure somehow, or some of them at least, because they were different in their spiritual status. Some of them were closer to God and may receive inspiration. Some of them less. Although most of the exegetes regarded them as awliya Allah, all of them were awliya Allah. So they were prone to receive inspirations from God what to do next. Or especially after they rose and they spoke about their faith, this sort of wilaya of Allah was upon them. So now that you have dissociated yourself from them and what they worship, seek refuge in their cave. Apparently their cave means that they knew exactly where the cave was. They had located it before. Maybe they had visited it before. Maybe some of them used to go and worship in that cave before. So it's not any kahf, any cave. It's not fa'awu ila kahfin, go to a cave. No, there was somewhere that they had located before, and they thought that the best point to flee and to cover themselves from the people was that cave. Now, yanshur lakum min rahmatih. He unfolds upon you from His mercy. This is probably alluding to spiritual guidance that they were seeking. God will give you from His mercy, special mercy. We know that the Quran talks about two types of rahmah. One rahmah is rahmah of rahmaniyah, which is encompassing everyone. The other is rahmah of rahimiyah, which is special for those who want to connect to God and to receive that rahmah as human beings, as people who are guided. And even this this second type of rahmah is also divided in two types. One is a rahmah which includes all the believers. Anyone who believes is encompassed by this rahmah, is included in this rahmah. The second type of rahmah is for awliya Allah. That is when that rahmah comes, then confusion would go away. Knowledge about God would come. And this is what Allah mentions about His awliya and His anbiya in the Quran, that we made them enter into our rahmah, into our mercy. For example, about Lut, He says, وَأَدْخَلْنَاهُ فِي رَحْمَتِنَا. We made him enter into our mercy. Or أدخلنا في رحمتك, make us to enter into your mercy. This mercy is that sort of guidance which brings light into the heart. So here what they want is a light into the heart, in the heart, which brings them closer to God, gives them an understanding of God, and also, of course, that question that they had in mind initially, how, despite all these oppression and despite the power that the idolaters have, how faith is going to prevail. So this is the first thing they were seeking, in refuge, taking refuge in the cave. يَنْشُرْ لَكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ مِنْ رَحْمَتِهِ. Your Lord will unfold upon you from His mercy. The second thing, of course, was their concern about their faith. What will happen to us? What is going to happen next? So يُهَيِّئْ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَمْرِكُمْ مِرْفَقًا is apparently alluding to this second request, that God will bring ease into your affair. They cannot touch you, or He would give you some sort of way out of this situation in which you are now entangled. Now, فَأَوُوا إِلَى الْكَهْفِ وَإِذْ اعْتَزَلْتُمُوهُمْ وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهَ فَأْوُوا إِلَى الْكَهْفِ. Now that you have dissociated yourselves from them and their gods, seek refuge in the cave. As-Suyuti, the famous, of course, scholar, Maliki scholar, has an interesting statement here, which is rejected by some other scholars. He says, في الآية مشروعية العزلة والفرار من الظلمة وسكون الغيران والجبال عند فساد الزمان. He says, if we live in a corrupt time, where people are corrupt, like now, we live in a secular environment where people are really, many minds are corrupt with regards to God. I don't talk about social issues. With regards to God, many minds are corrupt. And even if they want to talk about God or religious history, they, of course, talk in a way that is totally unacceptable for the faithful people. Now, in this situation, when this environment is corrupt, the ayah alludes that it is permissible to choose isolation, uzla, and to escape from this dhulm and darkness of the time into caves and to mountains. It is permissible. Is it? I mean, we live in a difficult time at the moment. We live in a sort of godless global world where even the faithful are somehow influenced by this sort of godless ideology and material type of living. Are we allowed to go to caves and isolate ourselves, to dedicate ourselves to God? Now, Jamaluddin Qasimi, who's an exegete of the past century, a Syrian exegete, a sort of Sufi Sunni exegete. He says that his tafsir is a very rational tafsir, by the way, and he uses lots of Mu'tazili arguments in his tafsir. He says that this is vague. What Suyuti says is quite vague. When the time is corrupt, we have to seek refuge in caves and in mountains rather than living in cities and in urbanized society. He says, if the situation comes, the verse is telling this, if the situation is as such that we cannot practice our faith and we are forced to acknowledge and confess the faith of the prevalent faith of the society. Like nowadays, atheism is becoming a prevalent sort of understanding of society. If we have to confess to atheism, for example, if one time we can imagine, we have to. If we do not confess to atheism, we are killed, for example, or we cannot practice our faith. He says, then in that situation, the argument has some force, that yes, in that situation we should not live in society anymore and we have to leave, and even we have to caves and into mountains. However, if that is not the case, then there is no point in the verse telling us that we have to do that. And these people went to the cave because they were forced to confess or acknowledge the faith of the Romans. However, this is not complete as well, because these people were practicing taqiyya for a long time. They were faithful, however, they were not revealing their faith. I will come to certain traditions about that they were worshipping idols in front of other people, and especially because they were noble men, they had to take part in official ceremonies of paying tribute to idols and all these things, to offer sacrifices for the idols, and they did that. They used to do that, and they did taqiyya for a long time before they thought that it is now the time to reveal our faith. So it is possible that even in such societies we have to keep the faith while we don't need to proclaim it. Now we'll come to these verses about a hadith about taqiyya. So there is no such an allusion in the verse. The verse doesn't say that necessarily if times come like that, we have to go to caves and isolate ourselves. And especially Ghazali, who had a very huge mystical proclivities, he has rejected the idea that the verse never says that you are allowed to go to caves and live there if the society is corrupt. Anyhow, verses number 17 and 18, they give us now details about the cave and the way they were sleeping there. So there's again another jump. It assumes that they accepted the suggestion. They went to the cave and they stayed there. Now, how they stayed there, how was the cave, where was it situated? These are discussed in verses number 17 and 18. وَتَرَى الشَّمْسَ إِذَا طَلَعَتْ تَزَاوَرُ عَنْ كَهْفِهِمْ ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ وَإِذَا غَرَبَتْ تَقْرِضُهُمْ ذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ وَهُمْ فِي فَجْوَةٍ مِّنْهُ ذَلِكَ مِنْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ من يهد الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. You may see the sun when it rises slanting towards the right of their cave, and when it sets cuts across them towards the left, while they are in a cavern within it, in a space, in a spacious place within fi fajwa. Fajwa is a spacious place in the cave. This is one of Allah's signs. Whoever Allah guides is rightly guided, and whoever He leads astray, you will never find for him any guardian or guide. Now, why this situation of the cave was min ayatullah? Why was it from ayatullah? Now, the Exodus, based on their sort of tradition, the tradition that they follow, they have given different explanations. First of all, the cave, the verse says that the cave was not towards the east or the west. So they didn't receive the direct sunshine, rays of the sun in the cave. So when the sun raised, it's slanted towards their right. That means the cave was either towards the north or towards the south. And there's huge discussion among exegetes whether it was towards the North Pole or towards the South Pole. And the reason for that is because the cave which is in Ephesus, that they say it's the cave of Ashab al-Kahf, is towards the North Pole. The cave which is in Jordan, which recently they have found and they say that is the cave of Ashab al-Kahf, is towards the south. That's why they have discussed about this issue. And the point is that if we regard the direction of a person who is standing outside the cave, and the verse says, when the sun rises, it turns towards the right, slants towards the right, and when it sets, it slants towards the left, then the cave would be towards the North Pole. If we regard the directions of someone who's inside the cave, then it would be opposite. It would be towards the south. However, the verse is not discussing that. It's just about the instances that they have found about this cave of Ashab al-Kahf. Anyhow, they did not receive any direct sunshine because sunshine would have rotten their bodies. And therefore, when they went into the cave, of course, they didn't know they are going to stay there for 300 years. So it was not important for them which direction was the sun, whether the cave, whether the sun shone into it directly or not. It was not important at all. Especially there was a spacious place at the back of the cave which didn't bother them with sunshine. However, if they wanted to stay there for 300 years, then it mattered that whether the sun directly shone upon them or not. So that is why it says, ذَلِكَ مِنْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ. This is from signs of God, that although they had not made any arrangement for the cave to be like that for their 300 years asleep, however, we had arranged it for them, that the cave should have been like that. There should be a spacious place at the back of the cave so that the wind can go through and their bodies are somehow have ventilation, and also they do not receive the direct sunshine on their bodies, because of course, although all was a miracle, however, miracles are also done in a way which uses the natural laws as well. Therefore, this is from ayatullah, the way the cave was situated, the slanting of the sun towards the right when it rose, the slanting or cutting across them without meeting them when it was setting, and them being in a spacious place in the cavern of the cave, it was from ayatullah. Other exegetes take a more radical sort of explanation for this. They say that when they were sleeping in the cave, their bodies or their spiritual aura was as such that it emitted light. And this may have been somehow instrumental in the fact that whoever set eye on them would flee from them. There was a sort of aura around them. And when sun shone in the morning and in the evening into their cave, so here there's no point in saying to which direction the cave was. The rays of the sun were overpowered by the light which emitted from them. Therefore, when the sun came, you would see as if the rays of the sun disappeared towards the right until it passed them, and you would see them on the right. And the same thing in the evening, when the sun was setting, you would see the lights of the sun, the light of the sun would disappear when it reached them, and somehow was absorbed in their light, and then until it's just passed through them towards the left. Now, this is what they say. Like, for example, the exegetes like Oshairi, who's a great mystic of the 5th century, he has explained this in this way. It was in this way that we can say this is from Ayatullah, ذَلِكَ مِنْ Ayatullah. However, the following statement, مَنْ يَهْدِ اللَّهُ فَهُوَ الْمُهْتَدِي, would somehow support the first understanding. They didn't know where they were going. They didn't know they are going to stay there for 300 years. They thought that they stay there for a couple of days. After things are calmed down, they would escape from there to some other place outside the Roman territory. However, they stood there for that long time, and therefore this is from Ayatullah. Whoever Allah guides is really guided. That they were guided into that cave in that manner. Now, about their bodies, how they were sleeping there. وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا. Had you seen them, you would have imagined that they were awake. So that means probably their eyes were open, although they slept, but their eyes were open. And they did breathe in a way that everyone looking at them would have thought that they are awake. And therefore they somehow were afraid of getting close to them because they had their swords by them and all these things. So if they're awake, if they were asleep, of course, people, thieves, others could have come and probably get close to them and find out about the situation. However, anyone getting close to them would have thought that they were awake. وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا وَهُمْ رُقُودٌ, while they were sleeping. Only the eyes being open probably doesn't give this impression that someone is awake. Probably something more than that is needed, and what more was there, we don't know. وَنُقَلِّبُهُمْ ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ وَذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ. And we turned them right over right and left side, so that their bodies do not get the injury of being on the rock all the time on one part, and also for probably the blood circulation, the concentration of blood in one place, and all these things. So God is actually telling us, despite it being a miracle, we were keeping them in a natural way as well. We had made the situation in a way that we could keep the bodies as whole. However, of course, we had made them to sleep, and we could have done that through our power. The bodies were looked after, while the soul was absent. This is like the story of Uzair alayhi salam, when he passed by a village and he saw that all the bodies of people, probably there was a plague or earthquake or something, and the whole village had died at once, all together, and there was no one to bury them. And so all the corpses were were scattered around. When he passed by, he saw these corpses, rotten and eaten by animals, eaten by flies and such things. A very horrible sort of scene he saw. So قال أنا يحيي هذه الله. How God is going to give life to these bodies again? How is it possible? So Allah wanted to show it to him. In fact, it was a request to know. أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها قال أنى يحيي هذه الله بعد موتها فأماته الله 100 عام ثم بعثه. God made him die for 100 years and then he raised him. Apparently, here there is a sort of allusion to the fact that even the rotten bodies could be raised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, when he was raised, there is no allusion in that verse whether his body was kept intact or his body was also rotten or whatever. However, God wanted to say that if you die, there of course was death. Here is a sleep. Here is a sleep. That means the body is being managed still by the soul. The blood is running through the body and the body is kept fresh in that way. There it was death. And when he came back to life, of course he had a donkey with him on which he carried his provisions. The donkey had rotten, the donkey's corpse had rotten. And God said, now you want to see how I give life to the dead. Of course, you cannot judge it with your own body because you don't know what situation of your body was. But look at your donkey now. فانظر إلى حمارك كيف ننشزها وانظر إلى العظام كيف ننشزها ثم نكسوها لحما. Look at the bones, how we make them to regrow, to recreate itself, the cells of the bone, and how then we cover it with flesh. This is how I bring back the dead bodies. It's like a cloning from cells. Actually, the verse is telling us like that. It's not that I give them new sort of material. It's just like the cloning from the existing cells. It recreates, reproduces itself. And then the flesh comes round it. Look at it. Look how it does. Now look at your فَانْظُرْ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِكَ وَشَرَابِكَ. Look at your food and your water. Or sharab, it was milk probably. The fig, he had some fig with him and some milk. He says, look at the fig and the milk. It is exactly the same way you left them 100 years ago. So I can keep things fresh. I can leave them to rot, but I am able to bring it back. Here, of course, God is telling us the bodies were kept fresh because the soul was there. They was asleep. However, God gave them back their lives. And that is why, because the body needed to be kept fresh, needed to be kept alive, so we made it to happen in this way. The air ventilation, the sun rays, the turning them right and left, all these we made. وَكَلْبُهُمْ بَاسِطٌ ذِرَاعَيْهِ بِالْوَسِيدِ. And also another thing, we had put a guard for them. Well, we know that there was a dog accompanying them, and that dog was put to sleep with them as well. And that dog was spreading his forelegs in the entrance of the cave, and anyone looking from far would have been filled with fear from the dog, a very huge dog. وَكَلْبُهُمْ بَاسِطٌ ذِرَاعَيْهِ بِالْوَسِيدِ. And there was, of course, this guard for them so that no one could get close to them. However, if someone wanted to come close, despite all these provisions that we have made, the dog on the entrance, then their eyes were open, you thought that they are awake, but they were sleeping. Despite all these provisions, if someone tried to get close to them, لَوْ اطَّلَعْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ لَوَلَّيْتَ مِنْهُمْ فِرَارًا وَلَمُلِئْتَ مِنْهُمْ رُعْبًا. Would have you chance to look upon them, you would have turned and fled from them, and you would have been filled with terror of them. How? We don't know. How Allah had made that aura around them, that anyone getting close to them would have been filled with fear and would have run away. We don't know how it happened. And this is why they did not bring them out of the cave. After a couple of weeks, probably, or a few days, the ruler found them. They traced them, they found them in the cave. However, they didn't dare to get close to them to bring them out, because the ruler wanted actually to make a lesson out of them, because these were important people, prominent noblemen, and converting to Christianity, this could have had great impact in the whole area, people hearing about these noblemen converting into Christianity. So the king wanted to make a lesson out of them. However, he couldn't do that because no one dared to get close and bring them out. All those soldiers and commanders, they didn't dare to go close and bring them out. And that's why eventually they decided to seal the cave and put a sort of note on the door that this is the example of people who convert to Christianity, and this is the story of these people. So this is another provision, that we wanted them to stay in the cave. We want them to be there for long time. However, one question may come: if they sealed the cave, what was the point of all these sunshine and other things coming from the right and the left and not touching them? Probably, of course, we know the time was very sort of volatile in terms of rebellion and all these things. Especially many Christians were living around knowing that these Christian fellows were there. They tried to come and bring them out, save them, or at least bury them. And therefore, soon after the event, the cave was broken into by people who wanted either to respect them or just out of curiosity to see what happened, or especially after the ruler died and the guards went away, because there were guards there not to let anyone to go in or to go and bury them. So the cave was broken into soon after. However, that provision that God had put there, that had you set an eye on them, you would have fled before you somehow feel the terror inside your heart. You would have fled first, and then you would have felt the terror inside your heart. That actually kept people away from this cave. And that's why even after the whole empire became Christian, no one dared to go and to bury these people or to honor them with some sort of ceremony or anything. So they just left them there without going into the cave for the 300 years that Allah had destined that they have to be there. So after that, of course, we raised them, certainly. وَكَذَلِكَ بَعَثْنَاهُمْ. In the same way that you saw how we had made these provisions in a miraculous way, in the same way, we raised them for a purpose. Inshallah, we will discuss this in verse number 19. وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِهِ الطَّاهِرِينَ.
Thank you very much, Shaykh. We have about 10-15 minutes for question and answers. Do we have any questions? Seems we've explained things very clearly today.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah. Or too difficult, or too simple.
Shaykh, thank you for the lecture. In the beginning you talked about the proof of the Creator. There was an argument that how do you prove the Creator? Or if somebody asks me, I know we have certain way inbuilt ourselves that there is a creator, and then somebody asks, how do you prove the creator? Because if you are created, and then who created the creator? And then the argument stops there. I know from the hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salam, we are told not to delve too much into the creator, otherwise you will go astray. I mean, how would you explain to an atheist or even to a believer who is slightly wavering? Is there any simple answer?
You know, when I said about the proof, I meant that we cannot attribute things to God or talk about God without clear proof. And if we do that, if, for example, say, in my opinion, God is like this, or in my opinion, God works in this way, then we are actually telling things out of ignorance about God. We are not allowed to do that. So either we have to use undeniable rational argument, like, for example, whatever we see in this world needs a creator. The design we see, the sort of coordination of things we see, it needs a creator. This is a rational proof, and this is undeniable. Of course, people can deny anything, but rationally it's undeniable. Or if we want to go into more details about God, these rational proofs cannot tell us anything. We need to have someone who has authority to talk about God. As the Quran says, Subhanallah amma yasifun, illa ibadallah al-mukhlasin. God is above whatever people describe, except those mukhlasun that God has chosen them to give them that knowledge. Now those people, of course, come with proofs as well. They come with miracles, they come with good argument, they prove their knowledge, they prove that they have the knowledge about God. And in that case, of course, we can say that, okay, we have a proof here. Someone who has been given knowledge is talking about God, and we are referring our understanding to that person. Now, proving things for an atheist, of course, if an atheist is not convinced by what they see around them, no one can convince them. I mean, how do we know about God? We don't have more knowledge than atheists, of course. We are seeing the same thing that atheists see, but we are convinced by what we see. These are ayatullah, these are signs of God. And they are not convinced, they reject it, they don't want to listen, or they say, well, this is not convincing for me, or whatever. If they cannot be convinced by what they see, they would not be convinced by what you say. That's, of course, very clear. Except if someone, as you said, someone has some sort of just a sort of shubha in the mind, a question, how is it possible? Just like what you said, if God has created the world, who has created God? Then this could be, of course, answered rationally, that because the creator should not have the qualities of the created. So the created is sort of contingent, can be and cannot be, and therefore it needs someone to bring it into creation, into existence. However, God is not like that. God is wajibul wujud, is a necessary being, and therefore God doesn't need a creator. Just like with what we say, God is beyond time, God is beyond space. All these things that we say would tell us the difference between God and the creation. And these are the answers we can give to people. Alaikum assalam.
This beautiful story about the people of the cave, is there any way we can relate it to the shuhada that are alive and being sustained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is there any message for us within this to understand how that happens?
Well, if we believe that they were not dead and they were just sleeping, as the verse clearly says, and despite all that the verse clearly says that they were sleeping, it's strange that some people believe that they were dead rather than being sleeping, and then God raised them. However, because they were not dead, so they did not go into that realm of the martyrs or shuhada, where the souls rest. Of course, we can relate to it that if God provided for these people in their sleep, you can imagine how God would provide for shuhada while they go and live beside him. We know that all souls are alive after death. I mean, no one dies. So in this verse which says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءً عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. Do not suppose those who are killed in the way of our God are dead, but they are alive. This is something which applies to every soul. Every soul is alive. However, what is specifically mentioned about them is that عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. They are beside their lords, and their Lord provide for them. This is something that not all souls will have after they die. We, of course, may live in good places, in bad places after we die, but being beside God, which is a realm, which is a spiritual realm, a sort of higher rank of existence, is only something which has specifically been mentioned about shuhada, that they will be in that realm. And they will be provided for, they have provisions in that realm, as opposed to other souls who are not martyrs, which are in a different realm. This, of course, does not exclude other souls to be in that realm, which have the same rank as shuhada. For example, we have in many traditions, if you do such and such, you have the reward of a shaheed, of a martyr. It means you will go into that realm. The prophets, awliya Allah, all these are in that realm, or even above that realm. But if an ordinary person, not some of those very highly regarded mu'minun, if an ordinary person is killed in the way of God, they will go to that realm as well as the awliya and others.
Do we have any more questions?
Assalamu alaikum. So, to carry on what you said, it's not the body which is alive, it's the soul of the shuhada which is alive. And then you explained that all souls are alive. Therefore, what's the difference then? Because they're alive and all the souls of other people are alive as well.
The difference is, عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. They are beside their Lord, the shuhada. Not other souls are beside their Lord. And as I said, beside their Lord is not a physical place, it's a spiritual realm, which gives them higher rank than other souls. They are free to move, they are free to know, for example, things that other souls may not know. They are revealed secrets which other souls do not have access to. This is the benefit and advantage of being in that realm of عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ.
So it's not the body which is going to be. So if
No,
you
of course,
bring the body
it's all
out,
the soul.
it probably would have disintegrated.
We
or whatever.
see that bodies, some of the bodies do not exist at all to bury them, you see. Yeah.
Sorry, just to for my understanding. So when it says that Allah sustains them, it's not that He sustains their body.
No, of course not. No, it's the soul
Like
which
the
is being
way
sustained.
the
No.
Ashab al-Kahf were.
So that's very different. Allah sustained their bodies because they were asleep, not, of course, shuhada. Alaykum as-salam.
Thank you for a beautiful explanation. So, when you say the souls are alive after we died, so in some religion they talk to the soul after they died. I know we are not supposed to do that, but is there that means element of truth in it?
Yes, there are some truths in certain occasions, not, of course, always. But yes, there is possibility of connecting to those souls. Even sometimes ordinary people connect to them in sleep, and they relate to them things which are probably not known by anyone else. And that shows that the connection is true, and there has been some establishment of connection. So there is a possibility for that, yes. But mostly these people who say they somehow summon souls and speak to them, they are not souls, they are just jinn which are around. They come and somehow pose themselves as being the soul of the deceased or something like that. They like it, they entertain in that. If, for example, you sit together and want to talk to a soul, especially in these sort of funny ways where they put this sort of thing and they put their fingers there, in most of the cases, there are jinns around which become very happy to entertain themselves and these people with posing themselves as deceased souls and coming, I'm your father, for example, and then they laugh at them, certainly.
Are there any further questions?
Shaykh, now, still continuing on the matter of soul, people say that souls of our relatives or our friends, they visit us, especially on the Thursday night. Is there any truth in that? Because are they allowed?
We visit them on Thursday night.
No.
They visit us.
The souls visit us on Thursday night.
The souls, in traditions we have that the souls, depending on their ranks, are given permission to visit. Because as the other world is absent from us and we do not see what's happening there, they also are absent from this world and they do not see what's happening here. So you shouldn't think that they have knowledge of what's going on here. The only thing is that we have in many traditions that based on their rank, they are permitted to just make a quick visit of their relatives to see how they are doing. Every week, every month, every year, depending on their ranks. So they are not allowed to do that all the time. And when they come to visit, they cannot see everything. They see certain things that God wants them to see, not other things. For example, with regards to believers' souls, we have that they only see good things about their relatives. They don't see bad things. They don't see troubles. They don't see hardships that they are struggling with. They only see good things, because if they see that, they become very distraught. So God doesn't want that to happen. And when we go to visit their graves and give Fatiha for them, they sense it, but they don't see us, except in very, very certain times that they may see as well. But the whole point of going there and reciting Fatiha is it gives them good feeling and some relief as well in certain aspects, especially when you recite Quran or Fatiha for them. But that doesn't mean that they see us. Yeah.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. You said that the souls of the martyrs, they are alive and they are receiving sustenance or nourishment. And you said all the other souls are alive as well. The other souls, don't they need any nourishment?
Yeah, they receive. Yes, yes. The difference, as I said, is that realm in which they are. Inda Rabbihim. They are beside their Lord. Other souls are not beside their Lord. Not necessarily, of course, some other souls may be there, but not necessarily every soul is there. That is a realm which is very special. And not every soul is allowed to enter that realm of being beside the Lord. And therefore, the difference is not that they are provided for and other souls are not provided for. They are provided for in that realm. And that's the difference. However, of course, if we look at the context of the verse, is that the context is that people thought that someone who's dead, who's killed, is dead completely, is forgotten. The soul, there's nothing like soul or something like that. And Allah says, do not think like that. The shuhada are alive. But that doesn't mean others are not alive. They are alive. However, as I said, the difference between them and other souls is that they are in a higher realm. In a realm which calls Inda Rabb, beside the Lord.
So when we celebrate the Shab-e Barat, we believe that all the souls comes down on the earth. Is that
Laylatul Qadr?
No, 15th of Shaban we celebrate.
Oh, 15th of Shaban. Well, about 15th of Shaban or Laylatul Qadr, what we have is the spirits coming. This is different from souls of human beings. These are special creatures of Allah, like angels or above angels. The spirits are above angels. And on Laylatul Qadr, they come on earth. As the Quran says, تَنَزَّلُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَالْرُوحُ. This ruh does not refer to soul of human beings who are dead, because they are on the earth already. And this refers to the angels and the spirits which are in the higher realms and higher ranks. They come down to the earth to bring down, of course, the blessings and mercy of God.
Any more questions? I think we're done there. Thank you very much, Shaykh.
Thank
so
you.
much.
We meet next week?
Inshallah, we resume next week.
Inshallah.